April 2017. That's when the first RX 580 was released. It's the same year when the first Ryzen processors was also launched. That's almost 7 years ago. However, in 2024, we're still seeing a lot of these cards being sold in the market for about $80 or less. I guess it's time for us to revisit this card in 2024 and see how it performs in competitive games wherein speed, stability, and responsiveness are key factors compared to graphical fidelity. And to make things interesting, we're also going to compare this card against NVIDIA's latest 60 series card, the RTX 4060. Now, obviously, the 4060 will be about 4 times more expensive compared to the RX 580, but it would be really good to see the gap between these two cards, which is 7 years apart.
And for those who are new to the channel, we are running both cards on our Ryzen 5800 X3D setup. Latest drivers were used at the time of recording. All benchmarks were run at least 3 times before we started recording to ensure stability and to reflect real-world competitive gaming experience. We have used 1080p resolution here with competitive settings on all games tuned for maximum visibility and performance. The card we are using is the Sapphire Nitro Special Edition, but we have clocked this card to match a standard RX 580. Let's start with Warzone, and this game is probably one of the more demanding games in our test suite. This is 1080p native gameplay with the RX 588GB. Look how bad it runs, especially with those stutters. We are averaging around 80 FPS here. Let's enable FSR 3 quality. This is without frame gen. Against native, we are definitely seeing a boost in performance here compared to native. Let's chuck in some firing shots here and just look at that gap. However, we could probably still push some more. So let's drop FSR 3 from quality to performance, which technically should boost this a little bit more. Now we are definitely seeing more improvement here. At least we are now getting 100 plus FPS on our firing scenes. Let's go with this and compare it with our RTX 4060, and boom. Obviously no contest, but you also have to consider the price difference between these two cards. Once again, the 4060 is definitely an upgrade, but obviously not 3 times the upgrade in terms of performance. Here's how the FSR 3 performance and native 1080p would look like once you zoom in. Yes, you do get those shimmering effects with the RX 580 on FSR 3 and performance mode, but that's the sacrifice we have to make for these additional frames. And for those who are curious, here's the RX 580 against the RTX 4060 with DLSS. On real-world competitive gameplay, it's actually not bad if we're at close range fights. Around 107 average FPS, frame times are okay. There are some micro stutters here and there, but it's okay. Especially when you're getting this card for 80 bucks, right? Obviously, we are GPU bound here at 100%. And on the go lag, it's okay as well. I mean, it's at least 100 FPS even with the smoke effects here, and we even get the frag guy here.
And before we move on, boys, if you like the test that we do here, hit that like button. It really does help us a lot. Okay, let's move on to the next guy.
Apex Legends. Let's compare our RX 580 with the RTX 4060, starting with static shots. And this wouldn't be a shock to you. That's more than double the performance. We are only getting 99 FPS on static long distance shots with our RX 580. How about some firing scenes? Well, we're getting much more higher FPS here, and that's because our view distance isn't that wide. The RTX 4060 is still more than double here and even maxing out on FPS at times. And finally, let's go with some heavy action scenes, smokes, and a lot of explosions. And you can see how our RX 580 is definitely showing its age here regardless of the 8GB VRAM. And this is evidenced by the lower CPU utilizations. FPS definitely lower than 100. On actual gameplay, it's basically the same thing, around 100 FPS when we are having that long distance view with a lot of effects, and the frame time is pretty stable though with this game, but FPS does drop lower than 100 on heavier action scenes or wherein there's a lot of things going on. Not the best experience, but it's playable. Let's move on to everyone's favorite building game, Fortnite. Let's start off with comparing DX12 on the RX 580 and the RTX 4060. Now, DX12 is AMD strength, but that's only if you have a stronger GPU. Hence why in this scenario we have the RTX 4060 still dominating the RX 580. However, it's definitely not Nvidia's strong suit, as you can see from those frame time spikes, and this is totally repeatable. Moving on to performance mode, and once again we have the 4060 just pushing those frames, and this is because the RX 580 is GPU bottleneck here. But we are still able to see decent frames from our older card, which is definitely making it viable. In terms of GPU power, the RX 580 utilizes 40 more watts, but that's expected with an older GPU on an older process, which is a 14 nanometer process compared to 5 nanometer process with a 4060. And here we have all three modes with the RX 580. It's pretty clear that the only option here is performance mode if you want to have more frames. On actual gameplay, it's okay for the RX 580. We are getting those higher frames with lows at around 170. Now we are on performance mode here. Obviously we are still getting those random frame time spikes, but this is with Fortnite as a game. On build fights, you can maintain some level of stability with this one. Not the best experience, but definitely still playable. Next up is Valorant, one of our games which definitely requires a really high FPS. Here we have the RX 580 against the RTX 4060, and once again our RX 580 is GPU bottleneck here at 100%. Hence why our RTX 4060 is able to push through, but that's about 2 milliseconds difference between the two cards. On action scenes, we see that the RX 580 seems to have better consistency compared to the RTX 4060, and this is expected with Valorant. As you push more GPU utilization, you will see that better stability, although you would have lower FPS. On actual gameplay, we are definitely still getting higher FPS here, more than 400 at times, despite being GPU bottleneck. Still remains to be very viable with Valorant. Definitely still able to hit those shots, and if you're not able to match the FPS here, that's probably because of your CPU. I've got links in the description if you're curious on the paths that we use. Okay, let's move on to the next one. PUBG, and we are running DX11 Enhanced API here. I actually haven't looked at the other APIs. We might try to investigate that on the future. Anyway, this is our running shot, and RTX 4060 is clearly faster here. The RX 580 is still GPU bottleneck with the 4060 close to maxing out. The RTX 4060 is clearly faster here. A huge lead in favor to the 4060. Let's go with some heavy action scenarios with our mortars, and RX 580 just drops its FPS here from over 100 to less than that. On our real world gameplay, our performance follows through with those heavy action scenes. We're only getting less than 100 FPS with lows at around 70. GPU bottleneck with VRAM close to 4 GB. We do get the occasional frame time spikes here, but it's not that bad. Even with smokes and other effects, we are still able to push it here. We are able to frag those boys along the way. GPU power does reach around 150 watts for this game. Next one is the finals. Let's start with the standard running benchmark here at 1080p TAA. And look at that. Definitely a huge leap in performance here. The RX 580 just can't keep up with the RTX 4060. On heavy action scenes, it's the same story. FPS for the RX 580 has dropped even further, but hey, this is a 7-year-old graphics card, which is $80 now. We're not expecting any miracles here, right? On our actual gameplay, we are once again GPU bottleneck. FPS is definitely lower here on areas where there's a lot of things happening. I really struggle hitting my shots here because the frame times is just slow. Look at that, 13 milliseconds. That's pretty slow for a competitive game. Don't get me wrong, I can still play the game, but yeah, definitely not the best experience. I just realized I didn't do 1080p with upscaling test here, FSI, performance, or quality, it would probably have yielded a little bit better results. We might do that next time. So if you're on a budget, this 7-year-old entry-level GPU is okay as long as you don't have really high expectations. We're literally GPU bottleneck on all the games here, including Fortnite's performance mode. However, if you bump your budget to say about $500, AMD's contender in that segment is the RX 7800 XT. This is a very popular card and has been praised by reviewers. So if you're interested on its competitive gaming performance, we actually did a video about it recently. So click this video right here and we'll see you guys over there.